Thanks for listening to the Drummers Weekly Groovecast. You can contact the show at twitter.com/DW Groovecast and through Facebook at facebook.com/Drummers Weekly Groovecast.
Good evening.
I am warning you right now, if you touch my drums, I will stab you in the neck with a knife.
Ain't a bucket. Ain't a bucket.
Mom!
Take it easy. Lower it.
I'm not gonna lower it. I have to do this now.
I don't mind you playing it, but lower it.
Everything get straightened out?
No, we had a problem. I mean, we tried to do everything we could.
What do you mean?
Well, you know what I mean.
Nice.
Little trouble there. You're rushing.
Yeah, well, you know, that's just like your opinion, man.
Yeah.
John, how's your life, man?
It's a nice day out today.
You a little tired?
I'm tired. Yeah, it's okay. I had a pretty wacky weekend.
I did. I had a really busy one, man. But I mean, you were on the road. You were beating up that asphalt.
I was. Sometimes for a lot longer than it needed to be. That's for sure. Traffic in Atlanta Saturday was nutty.
Comes with the badge.
It does. I had fun the night before, though.
I know, man. You had an interesting gig on Derby weekend, didn't you?
I did.
Tell some of these folks that are maybe not quite as used to the working, traveling drummer routine, what pleasure you actually had.
Oh, I played a gig at the Kentucky Governor's Mansion in Frankfort up there, just outside of Lexington.
Blue blood.
Yes, sir. Yeah, you're driving, you know, you can feel the opulence of farms on each side of you. Like, I'm bringing the property value down to just frightening proportions here. It's a lot of money up that way. But we played at the Governor's Mansion, which was this kind of VIP thing. But what was awesome about it, and kind of not awesome, was they had a bourbon bar. And when I say that, I'm not talking about some guy with a few samples. This literally, they had a menu with about 100 different bourbons, and unfortunately, I couldn't partake a great deal because alcohol and me and Four Limb Independence we're on vacation from each other right now.
In these
not working out too well.
In this type of situation, I like to use a quote from the wonderful Donald Fagen. We have to endure the tyranny of the disallowed.
Amen. No, man, everybody up there was fantastic and hospitable, as you expect good Southern blue blood people to be. Even if they hate you, they're being pleasant. No, but it was fun, man. We did it. We just did some fun old R&B stuff and all that, but that bourbon bar, Lord have mercy. It was insane.
Sounds like a good time overall.
You know, I learned that there was a lot of the main companies you'd think of had a ton of offerings. Like Jim Beam, I think they had like 12 or 14 different bourbons under their little...
You know what you officially experienced there? You experienced the bourbon version of like endorser-only product.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what you got right there. You got into the endorser vault of goodness.
It was good. I did sample a couple that were mighty, mighty, mighty drinkable, and I had to walk away quickly.
Well, you didn't necessarily then endure the tyranny of the disallowed. You actually...
No, they were very hospitable and would have given me all I want. I'm just, as I stated earlier, we don't need the me on drums with a buzz. It's just not working out at this point.
From a musical standpoint, you know what I thought was interesting about that gig that you were telling me is that you actually played a private corporate style gig with an artist that actually played about half the gig with original material, or a third of the gig with original material.
I might be I might be stretching that a little bit, but the set list had at least 30% original stuff.
Yeah.
His stuff is really, pop and danceable, or, he also did a record that's real kind of Motownish inspired. So very accessible. There's a familiarness to his stuff. So it's not like going off the rails. We're not playing a bunch of pop dance stuff and then doing like some, rootsy singer-songwriter, woe is me crap in the middle of it. So he ties it in pretty well. Nonetheless, cool. Rarely do you get the opportunity to do that. And I like his songs a lot, so it makes things, it's fun to do.
Yeah, seldom are you on a corporate event where you get to play originals unless your name of the band is Chicago or
Huey Lewis and the News.
Phil Collins. That came at the time that Phil Collins was doing the corporate gig at one of the major hotel venues here in town, and I walked in and Nathan East and Chester Thompson were sound checking.
Poor Phil.
Yeah.
Stuck with those hacks.
Yeah, not bad, huh, for a little corporate gig.
Man.
Probably paid him $250,000.
Oh, there's a lot of that. Clearly, we're privy to a bunch of it, having been sort of the other act on a lot of this stuff. But
or opening for him, yeah, right.
I mean, like, there any given year in Atlanta, Earth, Wind, and Fire might play the Tabernacle six times. And you don't even know it.
Open for him, man, down there once before. This was post Sunny.
I don't think it. It's always that way. But there's been times when a band like that playing in town, you don't even have any clue.
Oh yeah.
So there's plenty of guys are willing to do the corporate thing. They get paid.
And man, let me tell you, those guys brought it like they were playing in front of 20,000.
I love it. As it should be.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and say this. Every group that I've been a part of that's opened for any of those major headlining acts like Heart, B-52s, Huey Lewis and the News, Earth, Wind, and Fire. God, I'm trying to think who this one girl, I want to say is, I can't remember her. It might have been Layla Hathaway.
Aretha Franklin?
No, it wasn't her.
Oh, somebody bigger.
Yeah, so I don't even know who that was you're talking about. But every single one of them played like they were playing in front of 20,000 people. It's probably because they actually got paid more than they would if they played
More
in
than
front
likely.
of 20,000 people.
It's interesting how, like Huey Lewis, for example, one thing that was crazy about them, we did a lot of gigs with them for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And they still to this day are kind of in that, we're just working musicians. And like they were working musicians for so long before they hit.
Yeah.
They weren't kids when they hit. They were just working players. And they never really kind of let go of that, including Huey. Like when you are hanging out with them, your peers, and they're not tripping. So there's some really interesting and refreshing things you find out when you get to do some of these shows. That one sticks out in particular. Like these guys they're almost afraid to be like, yeah, we're rock stars. Because they know the other end of it, and so they just kind of view everybody as like, hey, we're all working, and we got a gig. And granted, they're going to make thousands upon thousands of dollars more, but there's some cool things like that you get exposed to.
Which, if they're still living in San Francisco, effectively puts them at the poverty line.
No doubt. They still have a band house.
I know. Man, let me tell you, that the time that we opened up for them at the Tabernacle, several of those guys ate dinner with us in the green room with the catering, man. They just hanging out with us.
Yeah, that's the same. We did a bunch of stuff during the Olympics with them and kind of had not a shared green room, but they were in our green room all the time.
Yeah.
And like horn players, hey man, let's go to a jam, let's go play. And it's pretty cool. Most people are, we always hear about this standoffish jerk, but that's just because that's what sticks in your brain. A lot of people are pretty good.
Oh yeah, most of them really, really sweet guys, man.
Yeah.
That drummer, that I don't know what the status is of Heart right now. I know it's it's not good if you if you read the news. But the drummer that's been playing with him for 20 years or so, Ben Smith, salt of the earth, man, sweetheart of a dude.
That's good.
Yeah, we hung out for about 2 hours one night. So, but anyway,
did he ask you about me?
He did, man. Yeah.
I'm sorry about that crap.
Well, you know, I told him exactly what he wanted to hear. That you were freaking face down in a gutter.
Just broken hearts everywhere on the path to that said gutter. Such a pig.
You know, once again, man, it's to be expected with you.
I got nothing. I'm just living, baby.
Yeah. Well, not to inflate your ego any more than it needs to be on this, but
anything's going to be better than it is at the moment.
I wanted to give a quick shout out to some of our listeners who were singing our praises over that last show that we did about the little common problems and our tips to help solve them. You know, we sometimes beat ourselves up a little bit when we're talking about that, thinking, well, that's just something that everybody knows. Well, once again, we were proven to the, I guess, compliment of the show that we are providing a decent service. If we can pat ourselves on the back a little bit, we got some really nice response about some people going, hey, man, thanks for that little tip on the hi-hat or the snare drum thing or whatever. Didn't know about that. Gonna put it to work, man. So more importantly, I want to thank the listeners for continuing to be very vocal and responsive, because we do like to have an open forum for the show. It's good. I think it benefits everybody.
Most definitely.
Yeah, so feel free to keep posting on our Facebook page or sending tweets to our Twitter account.
I do sometimes get wrapped up in like, you know, I can hear I can see the eye rolling of all the veterans right now, and it's like, man, you can't get hung up on that. And every once in a while, it's like, oh, well, even with you, sometimes you're like, I didn't know that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool. Just giving back, sharing, it's all good.
Yeah, and while we're at it, wanted to go ahead and throw out a few kudos and thanks for some of our listeners. We monitor regularly where our listeners are coming from, and we regularly monitor the different countries as well. And I mean, we're getting some nice listeners in Tegucigalpa. Saw several of those have come on board over the last couple of weeks. Don't normally.
Did you just make that up?
I'm not making it up. I swear, man. I'll show you whenever we get finished.
I'm a pretty worldly guy, and I think you just made that up.
No, I'm not making that up, man. Wow. Yeah. We also are seeing incredible numbers in a few major American cities. And I know that I've said this before, but I would really like for our listeners in the cities of like Chicago, San Francisco, LA, Oshkosh, Wisconsin.
Hey.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Reach out to us and let us know if this is a school, or if it's just like a little group, like a drummer's lunch or drummers, because there are large numbers that every week listen to the show, you know? And so it's kind of one of those things. I'm just kind of interested on how it got. St. Louis is another one, where every week where we see a large concentrated section.
That's because a lot of people there know me, and they're just waiting for like, oh, let's see that blowhard walk all over himself today.
I was going to say have a psychotic meltdown.
They've already seen that.
Yeah. But yeah, I would really like to get some response from those areas to kind of know what it is or who it is that's listening. Like I said, I have a feeling it's a group, and they either maybe sit back and go, "Hey, listen to these guys; it's kind of entertaining," or like you said, wait for them to implode on themselves. Listen from the old Schadenfreude perspective. But
I'll know this much: if you're from Oshkosh, let's hang out, man. My wife's entire family on both sides from Wisconsin. And that's
really
salt of the earth folk up
where,
there.
Where is that in relation to Milwaukee? Because that's the only thing I know about that.
I don't know about Oshkosh. I know it's further north, I think, like north central maybe.
Oh, like getting up toward Minnesota?
Maybe. I know her family, her mom's side of the family is all from Lena, which is right outside Green Bay.
Okay.
And the other side, the father side's more Milwaukee. So the landscape of the rest of the state is not my forte. I know Oshkosh is in Wisconsin.
How about our topic for the next show will be the topography of Wisconsin. Click. You're
having a psychotic meltdown.
I am. Well, John, let's go ahead and we'll talk about today's topic.
Okay.
Today's topic is diversity and flexibility. You better have that if you're going to be in this business.
It certainly helps,
especially the flexibility aspect of things. Because you are going to get the curveball thrown at you from time to time, as perfectly illustrated by your weekend this last weekend.
Yeah, if you can't hit the said curveball, you're going to toil in the minors forever because they're coming at you left and right.
You got that. And we'll go ahead and throw out from the get-go that this diversity aspect that we're talking about is not just the diversity that everyone kind of gravitates towards when we talk about being a diverse musician, which is, be able to prepare a whole bunch of, or be able to play authentically a whole bunch of styles, which is something we are going to cover first. Mm-hmm. But there's a whole other section of this diversity that we're going to talk about as well. So right off the get-go, let's go ahead and just quickly discuss the thing that everybody immediately relates to diversity. And that is, if you're going to be a working drummer that does not shy away from phone calls, especially the ones, where you've got something that's a little outside of your comfort zone, you want to be a diverse musician or a diverse drummer from the standpoint of being able to authentically replicate different styles of drumming. And you want to be able to authentically replicate them from the standpoint to where you're comfortable with when that phone rings, when somebody goes, hey man, I got this little gig, and what we're doing is we're playing a ballroom dance, like I said, company opening. I did that a few months ago. Mm-hmm. And you got to be able to authentically play all those old dance room styles. You got to be able to play tangos. You got to be able to play bossa novas. You got to be able to play the infamous foxtrot. There's my little throw out to Jeff Porcaro.
Well, relax, fellas. This gig's probably not coming your way. So I'm thinking people are freezing up right now.
Yeah, but let me say, being able to authentically play a begin or a ballroom rumba, because there's a difference between like a ballroom rumba and then what you would call a rumba from like Afro-Cuban style of playing.
Or B.B. King's Live at the Regal.
Right, like a blues rumba type thing. So being able to authentically know what those things are and replicate them, of course, that's a very important thing to be able to do, because you don't want to turn down work when you're a working musician. You want to be able to play these different gigs, play them well, and then get the call back. Don't want to turn down money.
Well, the beauty of going that deep into styles and grooves that you mentioned here is really seriously, those gigs are going to be few and far between at this point. But the good thing about it is, if you're thinking, oh my God, what if I get that call, is most of these are not difficult grooves. They're
right.
It's just, if they make them feel good, all that, we're not talking about things that are just, some inverted songo, blah, blah, in five, none of this stuff is just, most of it was dance music, it's a groove in it. So, having a little handle on it, having a couple notes on a groove, if someone calls it, hey, it's not over. Don't be overwhelmed by.
Right. However, if you don't know them, though, it's overwhelming.
That's a problem. Definitely.
Right. Yeah, because it's the type thing that there are a handful of these different styles and feels that have a very distinct pattern. Mm-hmm. And if you're not flexible enough to be able to play those things and then be able to improvise on them a little bit, it can be a daunting task, even though, exactly like you said, the majority of these things are not these technically demanding feels and grooves.
And if we really were to break down a rumba, 90% of the guys on stage aren't going to know if you're doing it right or not.
That's true.
Have an idea of it, be able to make it feel good. But I know Phil's wearing me out on this, but don't get overwhelmed by that. Do some homework, and you'll realize it's not the end of the world. You know, you if you get a call for that, just have a working knowledge of some stuff.
Well, you know,
I'm not budging on that, man. Sorry.
Well, but the other aspect of that is this:
Look,
is
college
that,
boy.
you know, we were sitting.
Listen up, college boy.
I got my hands folded in my lap. Go ahead, speak to me, sir. Father.
Put their mind at ease and tell them
It's going to be okay.
that this stuff is all obtainable and
I just said that, man.
Okay.
I said that just a minute. I just said that it's completely and totally.
you keep harping on it. So now I'm stressing out. I'm going to get that call.
No, but there's a part two to this, and the part
I'm busy
two of this,
that night.
I just used a very narrow example of like a ballroom type
Right.
thing.
You're
The other aspect is this: is if you want to take another complete genre. Let's say that you're just comfortable playing a lot of jazz stuff. You've been playing just a whole lot of just straight ahead jazz, maybe even some light fusion things.
Mm-hmm.
If you get called to sub for a corporate band and it's going to pay you $450, do you want to turn that thing down?
No,
You know,
particularly.
and again, so it's the same thing. You want to be ready to play these styles and ready to play the style of music authentically.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me also wrap this up with another kind of a conceptual thing about this. All right. Something I think that's important to note when we talk about this diversity and the flexibility aspect of it is you want to make sure that, for example, if you are, and you know people that are like this, and I know people that are like this, if you're the kind of player that really puts his flag in the ground and goes, look, I am in this to play nothing but jazz, and you've made a conscious, intentional choice that this is what I'm going to do and I'm going to be happy with it. Now, some of this doesn't apply to you, but I think where a lot of guys get dark and they get frustrated and they get confused with things is that sometimes they don't make a conscious choice to do this. Do you understand what I'm saying? In other words,
sure do.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where it's like, you know, I'm kind of known for playing this style of music, you know, and I sure do wish that I could play in this corporate group. Or, hey, I wish I would get a call occasionally to play in a church or play some kind of a situation where I'm doing even pseudo-classical type things where you go in and you have to play drum set behind an orchestra, or even sometimes even jump in the percussion pit. Right? Play the occasional accessories lick or keyboard lick or timpani. And then sometimes
I need that bourbon bar right now.
Yeah. And sometimes I think what ends up happening is that they have the intention of wanting to be this diverse, flexible type of musician, but maybe don't work toward that.
Oh, I think that's more common than we want to.
Right. And so that's kind of what this thing is geared toward. Is you want to make sure that you make very conscious, very mindful decisions and choices on this and then go with it.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of times, man, that really gets lost, that you have too many people that really they haven't made this decision of like, you know what, I'm going to be this flexible guy. I'm going to open myself up to all this stuff. But then they wonder why either their phone doesn't ring, or then they'll go ahead and the phone rings, they take the gig and then just do a crappy job and never get the call back.
Terrible.
Yeah. So you got to be honest with yourself. You got to make a mindful choice and a mindful decision that, hey, if I'm going to be an authentically diverse, flexible player, I got to put the time in and I've got to learn how to do this stuff and do it correctly so that I will get the continued repeat calls.
Agree. You know,
there you go. I'm off my soapbox now.
Okay. Don't twist your ankle or anything getting down. The other part of that too is if you really are gonna take the approach of I'm taking the gigs that come down the pipe, you know, it's in your best interest to have that together, because you could be well known and well respected in your circles and what you do most of the time, and you're playing to your strengths. If you're a groove player, you're playing in a band that does that and you're just killing it and everyone's like, yeah. Now, if you go outside of that and you go do a gig and you're not prepared, there could be a number of people you've never played with that are just like, that guy sucked.
Yep.
And it's not necessarily that you sucked. It's you didn't put in the time to be able to cover ground that might be a little outside of your wheelhouse.
Man, I've been there. I've been that guy. I've been that guy.
Yeah,
Years ago,
man.
I've been that guy.
You got to be really careful. And there could be, and it could be, not that ever like horn players ever have a loud mouth and talk about anybody, but it could be a horn player who doesn't like your playing and tells someone that he sucked. Not that horn players would ever do that. Because
none of the ones that we know.
They don't voice their opinions.
None of the ones
anybody
that we know.
Ever. Even if they suck, they're compassionate and they're giving like virtual hugs to that person after the gig for months.
You know what I say to the rogue trombone player? Just be happy you got a gig.
Oh, yeah.
How you like that? Just be happy you're there.
Again, not that any horn players would ever do that. But just don't let it be an issue by being prepared, is what I'm saying. Then that horn player, if they for some reason went off the rails and decided to talk about, they're going to say good things.
John, I will go ahead and throw myself under the bus of being guilty of that by giving you just a brief story. I was called to, this was way, way back in the day. This was back, man, probably in the late 80s. I got a call to sub in the percussion section for a regional symphony. And man, I gave that gig not the time of day, sir. I just thought, man, they called me for this thing, and if I just throw my helmet onto the field, so to speak, I'm going to win this game, right? Man, I got embarrassed on that gig. I didn't read for crap. And I was playing all accessories and just did not do a great job whatsoever. It's a learning experience, man.
Brutal but effective.
Yeah.
Way to turn your head around on that stuff.
Yep, absolutely. Now, the next point I want to make about this diversity thing, it kind of flows right into what we talked about being diverse as far as like being able to play styles authentically and being able to play different instruments. And that is, aside from being diverse enough on drum set, it's also a good idea that as a drum set player, that you are flexible enough and diverse enough to at least have a good handle on playing other percussion instruments. Hey, don't shy away from playing shakers, tambourines, other kind of accessories. You have to do that from time to time. Make sure that you can play that type of stuff. And especially if you're going to put yourself out there and be available to play in the occasional theater production and or orchestra pit or orchestra situation, you better be able to play some keyboards and you better be able to play some timpani. Now, I'm not saying you have to go in there and be able to play chromatic timpani stuff from Bartok and, Schoenberg, but I mean, be able to at least play two timpani, be able to tune them and get yourself in the ballpark. That's very, very important.
That's where I would be in trouble. Like, if you tune them for me, I might be able to get through something, but I'd be like so preoccupied with tuning, the song would be halfway over.
Yeah.
I used to I used to have a pretty good handle on that, but I haven't done it for so long. It's just like, oh my God. Percussion, though.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I've been asked a lot as far as sessions, do some percussion, all that. Less now because a lot of times they're just overdubbing and programming it. But I kind of went, and I sort of regret it in some level, but not a lot. I just said, I don't do that because my shaker playing is average. And when you start talking about recording and 3.5 minutes and tambourine playing, like fatigue and it doesn't groove or you're just not laying in it the right way. So I've always kind of shied away from that. But have I lost work because of that? I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, I understand that. I think that overall, though, kind of what I'm getting at regarding this type of stuff is that you don't have to be Lenny Castro.
Right.
But you do need to be confident enough in it, like especially on a live gig. If you have let's say you're playing an acoustic ballad and you got the nervous Nelly or the panicky Pete that's up there singing, and he turns around and he's like, man, can you just give me something? You can pick up a shaker and authentically play it through there.
I'm such a dick. I'd like do the hit the wind chimes and go, there you go, pal.
You know what I like about that story? That short story is that you carry wind chimes.
I didn't say that.
Well, now
I'm assuming that
it's going to be provided.
Yeah. Look, in a perfect world, if Nervous Nelly turned around and did that, I would, for some strange reason, have wind chimes and be an asshole and just be like, there you go, man.
Now, part 2 of this is let's talk about some otherworldly drummers. So,
with better attitudes.
Yeah.
That work.
Yeah. Part 2 of this thing, as far as like being diverse on playing other instruments, let's go outside of the percussion family. These next folks that we want to talk about should be examples for everyone from a standpoint of looking outside of the percussion family, especially from the standpoint of being diverse enough if you want to write or compose or possibly produce things. And in some cases, actually play live on gigs. First guy I want to bring up, how about this slacker named Jack DeJohnette? He's probably better than 3/4 of most piano players that we know. He is a professional pianist.
Imagine if he just focused on drums. He'd probably be pretty good.
That's what annoys me about piano.
These guys.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he's just so. Yeah.
So there you go, Jack DeJohnette, a professional piano player, has an album, at least one, if not 2, where he does nothing but play piano on it.
Gary Husband's another one.
Yeah.
That is a fantastic
keyboard
player.
How about this guy that we talked about last week, Steve Jordan?
Yeah, he's, when he got into producer mode, I think that really motivated him because he just kind of, he sort of almost expressed like, I see a bigger picture because he started playing bass and guitar and clearly his career has blossomed by way of that. I think that's a big help, like the MD stuff he does.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. That's some worthwhile exploration there as far as.
So Steve Jordan, bass and guitar, probably keyboards too.
More than
likely.
Imagine.
And then you got his buddy, friend of ours, Charlie Drayton. This guy, of course, is a great drummer. Sometimes even gets confused for Steve Jordan. Man, he's played probably as many tours on bass as he has on drums.
Definitely. Great bass player.
You ever heard of a guy named Dave Grohl?
Wasn't he in Pearl Jam?
Yeah, he sure was, man.
No, he was in
Alice in Chains.
No, he was in Stone Temple Pilots. Right?
Yeah. This guy, man, he plays a little guitar, sings, writes a couple of tunes.
Goes to the bank a lot.
He does go to the bank a lot, and he is the de facto rock and roll acceptor of all awards.
That's true.
Yeah,
that guy. Yeah, he's been, man, and he's having fun.
Yeah, he is.
Good for him.
Another guy.
I don't know if he had that much fun in his first band.
Maybe
on one level, but there was plenty of reasons to not have much fun.
Isn't it interesting that most people know him originally, of course, from that group, but that group was only around for about 4 or 5 years.
In the public eye.
Yeah, in the public eye. And that he's been with his current group now for 20 years.
This is mind-blowing.
Yeah. Another guy that we talked about last week.
Mm-hmm.
What about a dude named Stuart Copeland?
Yeah, man.
Look at that guy. Composer.
Yes.
Keyboardist. Plays a ton of percussion instruments and plays them well. Done a few movie soundtracks. So there's another guy.
There's a guy that the scene he came out of, it's mind-blowing because most of his peers in the scene the police came out of were like they could barely play their drums.
Yeah.
Punk rockers and just he's had a pretty serious background. I think he's also motivated in I don't think he was as together with a lot of instruments at that point, but he did some soundtracks that I think really got him into that What was that Rumblefish, that movie he did? That was some really creative, interesting stuff.
He did. Didn't he do The Outsiders also?
You know, that would make sense because I think it's the same director.
Mm-hmm. And then he's done a host of like features. Like he did a thing called The Rhythmatist.
Is that like where he does with the orchestra and all that?
I think so. Friend of ours actually played bass with him, man.
Joe did.
Yeah, he sure did. On a gig down in I believe it was Savannah. It's either Savannah or maybe like Charleston, South Carolina.
I think I just saw he's going back on the road again. Old Joe.
I did too.
Hi, Joe.
Yeah, he listens to the show, so he will hear this.
Good. Miss you, man.
Yeah. How about, speaking of production, a dude named Butch Vig.
Fine drummer.
Yeah, got a direct correlation to Dave Grohl as well, because he produced that. I think it was the first and second, or not the first and second, but the two popular Nirvana albums. Didn't he do Nevermind and In Utero, where he produced both of those?
That sounds right.
Yep, got a little band called Garbage. It's going out on the road again here in a couple of weeks. And then you got a whole host. I didn't want to leave out the drummer vocalists.
Yeah, that can
Being
be a
able to
real
sing.
advantage.
Yeah. You know, the other thing about the vocalist is, aside from, of course, making yourself extremely marketable, the other thing from a pure musician standpoint is it sure does help your just overall musical ear of being able to hear things, hear what sounds right, you know, but it will give you a chance also to speak musically to other players in the band. And some of these hacks we're talking about are guys like Phil Collins, Don Henley, Levon Helm, and of course, I can't let this go.
Peter Jones is going to love this one, man.
Gil Moore from Triumph.
Yeah.
Gil Moore has
Fight the good fight.
That cat has gotten more press on this show than in the last year than he's probably gotten in the last 30. So now I've got to say this. We got to get in touch with this guy so we can get him on the show.
Okay.
Get a little Gil Moore, a little Canadian love.
I want him to bring his whole kit circa 1984 and set it up.
Concert Toms?
Imperial Star, Silver Mist. I remember that nonsense.
Man, he can sing high. Those two, man, what is it in the Canadian water that makes these power trio singers sing just high as balls, man? I
think they had a long since shut down boys choir in Canada, and unfortunately, a few of these guys were recruited to be the sopranos. And
we gotta have a contest where we put Geddy Lee, Rick Emmett, and Gil Moore together and have a high singing contest.
Where'd they go? Dogs are like perking up, like what?
I know, it's amazing. So anyway, we wanted to throw out a whole host of, and there's way more, but
man,
yeah,
right here in town. Did you see Tom's video the other day?
Amazing.
Tom Knight, who is just an absolute monster drummer and exceptional fella.
The guy's a painter and a voiceover artist. Come on.
And no slouch at either of those.
Yeah.
Pretty fine videographer, too. He's one of just those people like, let's just stop talking about his talent so I can at least get past this story without getting frustrated. Anyway, he put a video up. He's like, I always loved Runaway by Bon Jovi. So he just records every part, including vocals.
With harmony.
And it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Like, you know, that
Talented
guy can cover, you talk about covering some ground. He could do anything you'd ever want.
Talented guy.
Yeah. Really good stuff, man. If you can, you can go to one of our Facebook pages and we're friends with him, Tom Knight with a K.
Yep.
And just check this video out. It's so ridiculously fun.
It is. He was a drummer for TLC for several years.
Yep.
Yeah.
Teaches here taught forever at a school here. And just a monster. But man, it's a fun video because you just see, like, talk about diverse talent and putting it all together.
Yeah. I want to go ahead and jump down on the outline, John, and talk about also having a lot of different equipment, being diverse in your equipment choices. And there's a bunch of different reasons for this. Now, we're not saying run out and spend 15 grand on a whole bunch of gear.
Unless you're sending it to me.
Yeah. And unless, by the way, if you have the means, then sure, it's totally fine.
Right.
But something that I've kind of discovered that you and I have done is that over a period of 20 or 30 years, we have kind of cobbled together this rather extensive list of gear. And it's drum sets and snare drums, but it's other things as well. And you can think of it in a couple of different ways. Of course, yeah, you're going to have a whole bunch of different snare drums for different vibes for studio sessions and live work, right? Same thing for drum sets. It's good to have different drum sets, good to have different drum sets at different tunings for different things. Because naturally, man, I've got my little Fibes and or Gretsch bebop drum set with the 18-inch, 18, 12, 14, right? Those things don't go out on the rock gigs, right?
They don't?
No. But you
It's
got
like a little cannon, man.
Yeah.
I hear that so many times. Like, it sounds like a little pistol.
Right, Derringer. So you got to have that stuff to play the authentic straight ahead stuff. And then likewise, I don't take my 22, 13, 16 out on a piano trio gig. So now that's the most common and most graphic example. But let me go with me on this, John.
Hey, man,
okay?
I'll shut up. Go ahead.
Over a period of like 20, 25 some odd years, I have accrued a rather extensive list of, say, accessories and classical percussion things as well. I've got several different styles of, say, triangles. I got several different styles of tambourines, headed, unheaded tambourines. I've got things like slapsticks. I've got vibra slaps. I've got a whole bunch of different shakers. I have orchestra bells. I have that kind of stuff. Now, you're probably going, well, how often are you playing vibra slap and orchestra bells?
You mean the people listening?
Yeah, the people that are listening. And
I'm not.
Maybe.
I know you just have to have that stuff just in case.
Right.
It's all good.
Here's the thing. If you use them once a year and it's a gig that you don't have to turn down or have to go out and spend a whole bunch of money to be able to do this, if you kind of accrue it over a period of time, using it once a year pays for itself. I mean, do I have that many baran gigs where I have to go out and get an Irish baran and play? Maybe once every year and a half, but at least I've got it, and I can do it. And the other aspect is this, John, and I know you will sign off on this. Hey, occasionally, man, you might get a call from somebody that wants to rent it.
That does happen.
Sometimes the rental on something like that will, especially if it's over a period of a few days, sometimes the rental will pay for the instrument.
When I was doing a lot of rentals,
yeah,
it was nice. Except that part where they're like, hey, man, we need a really nice Gretsch kit. Do you know any good drummers?
Or, yeah.
No, good luck.
Point made. Yeah. But you get the vibe of that whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that the accrual of instruments over time, man, it does pay for itself. Again, like I said, I've got I've got congas, I got bongos, cajones, all kinds of different things like that, that you will get calls to play, to use that stuff from time to time. I have occasionally in my studio downstairs have gotten the request to overdub percussion on that. Sure. On different, I'll go ahead and play a drum track and somebody goes, what'd sound good on that? Why don't you play some bongos? Okay.
Tambourine.
Yeah, tambourine, shaker.
Yeah, I buy and sell a lot, so things come through like, you buy a kit and they have a bunch of accessories and all that, and I have a pretty good stash of things like, oh, that cowbell sounds exceptionally good, I'm just going to keep it.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So it kind of accrued that way. I don't use it much, but
you got it.
If I did, and every one of them sounds incredible, at least it's there.
Yeah, I mean, I've known guys that would go out and buy some things, and then all of a sudden, over a period of time, it'd be like, man, I'm not using these crotales, or I'm not using whatever, these wind chimes, and they'll sell it for pennies on the dollar, and then it seems like every
2 weeks later.
Yeah, 2 weeks later they get a call.
Yeah,
That
same theory applies to like You have a really nice vintage Ludwig kick drum and 13-inch tom, but no floor tom.
Yeah.
2 years, you're waiting for it. You sell it. There's 3 of them on eBay next week.
Exactly.
Dang it.
Yeah.
But that is true, man. If you come across some good sounding stuff like that, and you don't have to sell it to eat,
keep it.
Stash that away, and you never know.
I mean, the chances that you will use it again are huge. You will eventually use it again.
No doubt.
John, I want to finish up this topic by talking about a couple things regarding flexibility. And
I'm going to go take a nap now.
One of these we've talked a little bit about before in the past, but I want to kind of tie these two together. You and I both know musicians that are not just drummers, but play other instruments. We're going to call them conceptually inflexible. And what I mean by that is we know folks that have literally unconsciously made these decisions, or have kind of unconsciously made themselves inflexible from the standpoint of like, I'm not going to let that guy tell me that I'm playing too loud or playing too soft. I'm not going to let that guy tell me that I'm rushing or dragging. I'm not going to let that guy tell me that I'm playing too much like Jack DeJohnette. I'm going to impose my will on these guys. And one of the things that sticks in my mind about guys that are like that is that there's some sort of personality-driven thing that they have attached these inflexibilities to. It's very dangerous to let these musical styles and concepts become a part of your personality. Because essentially what happens is if you're one of these guys that's like, man, playing these drums and being able to play exactly what I want to play and as loud as I want to play, regardless of what anybody says, it's my freedom, man. It's part of me being me. That's a very dangerous line to cross over.
No doubt. And
yeah,
no matter how together you are as a player, sometimes just that attitude alone is going to just take you out of the picture for that particular person and their hiring
right
in the future.
Well, unless you literally win the lottery and all of a sudden you are the Elvin Jones that finds the John Coltrane, you're going to be persona non grata with 99% of the hiring musicians.
True.
And so it's just really important that you are flexible enough with your musical concepts to where you don't take personal affront to when someone tries to communicate with you that, hey, we need to take this in a slightly different musical direction than you're currently playing. I mean, that is, I know we're kind of dovetailing this in with some other stuff, but man, not tying your personality to these things and being flexible enough to shift on the move and not be personally offended. Woohoo! Man.
Yeah, that's a good place to be. I remember a conversation back in the day, we all used to kind of hang out in drum shops. That was sort of like where we'd congregate and spend our Saturday afternoon or whatever and just chat about this and that. And I remember a rather established player in St. Louis we were all hanging out one day, and this younger guy who's kind of has a lot of potential comes in, and he's like, yeah, man, I just heard, Tony Williams talking about, like drums are meant to be hit. People say I play loud, but they're meant to be hit, man. And, sometimes you just can't lay back. You got to do your thing and all that. And that's where I'm at. And this wise old sage said, yeah, drums are loud. And you're not Tony Williams. And this kid was like, I was like, that's really the crux of it is you can't hang your hat on some alien / legends mindset and think it's going to apply to your everyday working world. You know, just because Tony Williams said drums are meant to be loud, a lot more people are going to look past his volume than yours.
That's exactly
Sorry.
right. Well,
That's how it is.
The underlying theme of a lot of this stuff that we talked about today is you better think about and then make mindful, conscious decisions and choices.
Mm-hmm. True.
You know, because a lot of this stuff is these unconscious choices that you think this is the way that it should be and the way that it ought to be, and you know,
the music business don't care about your opinion on that.
That's exactly right. So
and don't think for a second having it all together, style-wise, and even playing appropriate, that you better be showing up on time.
Yep.
And not being a social jackass.
Well, that's the last point I wanted to make, and that's the flexibility versus inflexibility.
I'm a mind reader.
Yeah,
I mean an outline reader. Sorry.
of personality choices. We've talked about it before a long time ago. I think that some of this was within our first 8 to 10 shows.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just kind of outlining the importance of being flexible with your personality and your demeanor. And you really can't overstate it enough, but you better be flexible with everything from rolling with the punches, with anything that comes with gigs regarding like, hey, we got to change this, we got to do this. People asking you to do making certain musical choices or musical changes. Man, just being flexible and being a good person when it comes to gear issues even. Mm-hmm. You know, if you have problems with this, that, or the other with part of your gear, be flexible, man. And you know, if this part of your rider didn't get fulfilled, it didn't happen, and there's not a lot you can do about it. But
right.
you better work with a smile on your face, and if it's something that you can control in the future, learn from it and then move forward. But boy, I'll tell you, the old inflexibility of not being able to roll with the punches and integrate into certain situations, man, will get you fired faster than almost anything.
No doubt. No one's saying you have to like those things. No one's saying you can't be upset about them and you gotta, you know, that's all good. You know, I mean, look, this stuff is going to happen. If it pisses you off, manage it.
It's in the way you handle it.
Yeah. And more importantly than that, I think what sometimes is overlooked about while we're preaching flexibility and all that is it's okay to take stock in the scenario too.
Mm-hmm.
If this band leader continues to pull this crap like you're supposed to be fed and you weren't, or it suddenly is a continuous gig instead of having breaks, you know, maybe you needed to say, I'm not interested in working for this guy. That's not being inflexible. Be flexible on that gig and get through it so your reputation doesn't suffer. But you can, in turn, and diplomatically turn down work from someone if these things are. So not putting yourself in that position, again, is on you.
It's actually it's an informed choice.
Right. And a wise choice often. Mm-hmm. But it's still on you, man. If you continue to take gigs from someone and they're just working your last nerve with overlooked details or, you know, ridiculous expectations, there's a point where you got to say, I'm not going to do that. As opposed to getting to the point where you just show your ass and that's all what anyone's talking about or thinking about.
Yeah.
Most people aren't going to be thinking about those 4 gigs you were taking advantage of. They're going to think about the time you blew up or you cussed out somebody or you refused to do something or you packed up and left. Don't make those mistakes, man. Be mindful of the environment you agree to and don't get bit by it continuously and then in turn get bit by it because you blow your gasket.
Oh man, there are things that are outside of anyone's control. You can have, if you're doing an outdoor gig, you can have weather changes. What are you going to do?
Yeah, and sometimes, man, even I pick on a band leader, but sometimes a band leader is just that's shoved in their face, and what are they going to do? Say no?
Yeah.
Hey, we want continuous. You better do it, or you're not going to get paid. Well, that sucks, but you just deal, man. Don't allow yourself to be taken advantage of over and over and over and over again, because then it's that old theory of we don't even need to repeat it, but handle your business, man.
Is it too early for me to say this is my favorite show?
I like it because that means we can wrap it up.
We hadn't even got to our final segment of the day.
Let's do it.
All right, guys. Well, we hope we helped you out with that. That's a topic that I think is very important, especially from the aspect of maybe talking about a few topics that you're maybe not quite as consciously aware of. Maybe we made you a little bit more aware of them today. Overall, our global thing is this: is just be very aware, make conscious decisions, make conscious choices on this kind of stuff. Don't sit there and assume that other people know exactly what you're thinking and what you want to do. It's very important that you have these type of conscious thoughts, you process them, and then act on them so that you can then be the diverse and flexible musician that you think you might already be, but you're not. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and finish up the show. We are due, John, because it's been weeks upon weeks of having a great underrated drummer. I'm going to go first today.
I like it.
My guy is a wonderful New York jazz drummer by way of Omaha, Nebraska. It's a guy named Victor Lewis. It seems like, John, that he has not been quite as active on the scene over the past, 10 or 12 years as he was, especially back in maybe the 80s and the 90s.
He had a lot of pretty high-profile gigs, and
oh yeah,
MD was all into him.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we're going to talk about some of these high-profile gigs. Just a quick backstory about Victor Lewis. Victor Lewis, originally from Omaha, Nebraska. Got his musical education at the University of Nebraska, and like any forward-thinking, aspiring jazz musicians, moved to the New York area back in the 70s. And one of his first big gigs was with Woody Shaw, and I think that's probably where I became aware of him. Some guys were throwing around probably trumpet players throwing around those Woody Shaw albums, like especially Stepping Stones, that live one that was done at the Village Vanguard. And then there was a record called Woody 3 in particular as well that Victor Lewis is just all over. That's some good listening for you to check out some early Victor Lewis. That's from the mid to late 70s, maybe like 76, 77, 78. Of course, you get to hear the great Woody Shaw on there as well. And then also, some of my favorite recordings of Victor are from the mid and late 80s. He had a long association also with Stan Getz. There's two records in particular that I like of his, of Stan Getz's, that Victor's on. One is called Anniversary, and another one is called Serenity. Both excellent albums. I think not only is Victor doing some of his best playing on there, but I think that's some also Stan Getz's best playing as well. They really stretch out on there. And some of the rhythm section on those records, Victor Lewis had a pretty good association with some of the players, like Kenny Barron, the pianist that's on some of the Stan Getz stuff.
I love Kenny.
Yeah, Victor's on a lot of Kenny Barron's records also, especially in the 90s. He did a lot of work with him. And also, just as a side note, there is a concert, a video, that Stan Getz did, I believe, around 1990 or 91 in the Paul Masson Vineyard. It's an outdoor gig. I bet Victor was flexible on that, to play outdoors, no covering.
Well, he was.
Yeah, and he played.
If not, he had some liquid comfort to get him through it.
What's the old Paul Masson outtake commercials?
We sell no wine before it's time.
Orson Welles. Ah, the French. Yeah.
Isn't that their tagline?
Yes.
I don't know how that.
Yeah.
I can't remember what I have for breakfast. For some reason, that came to me.
Oh, do yourself a favor, everybody. Go to YouTube and check out the outtakes of the Orson Welles drunk Paul Masson
I'll do that.
videos. Yeah.
Is it on par with the Colonel Sanders?
Oh, it's actually
stuff?
better because
Nice.
he's just so out of it, man.
He's pretty brilliant too.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So that's my pick, man. Is Victor Lewis, and also one other quick thing. Victor Lewis, I think probably something that might contribute to him not being quite as visible. Victor Lewis has been on staff in the jazz department at Rutgers University for the better part of 15 years now.
All right.
Yeah, so he's probably got a bit of his time taken up dealing with young bucks trying to make it through that program up there.
Man, speaking of Rutgers, my nephew is in library science, and he, out of grad school, he had to do some kind of internship, and one of the options was Rutgers Jazz Archives. I didn't know this, but they have the largest jazz archive of anywhere in the world.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
It makes a lot of sense, but for some reason, to me, Rutgers, like, there's a lot of things about Rutgers you forget. Like, it's a state school. You know, it's kind of like you just sort of, I've always kind of like accidentally lumped them into like some of the Ivy League and the Northeast private school thing, just because it's not the University of New Jersey, which no one would go to.
Right.
So they're smart, man. New Jersey fellas are smarter than we think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's right there. It's access to the city and all that. And I mean, clearly someone in that library was a jazz fan and started that on its path to being the biggest collection. But I would love to kind of get my hands on some of that stuff.
Man, between Rutgers and William Patterson, you got pretty good faculty on board if you're in Jersey.
How could you not?
Yeah.
That's just like Boston too. There's just, you know, New York even more so though.
Yeah.
Wow.
Who you got, John?
My guy, some of you will probably be like, oh, I don't think he's underrated, but in a lot of ways I think he is. My guy is Richie Hayward from Little Feat.
Yeah.
And when I say underrated, in my opinion, you know, he was never framed as a drummer's drummer in just that regular, just lauded as all that kind of thing. But in a lot of ways, maybe he should be, because I mean, he's just groovy as a git. He definitely kind of has his own thing in a way, which I always think kind of puts some of those guys up in that echelon. And he, you know, he wasn't, you know, his band is not, it wasn't it wasn't like he was in, you know, Led Zeppelin or some just huge thing, like a loyal following, a great, you know, a lot of musicians and all that love him, but he's not on the edge of everybody's tongue like maybe he should be, in my opinion, because he's just greasy and groovy and all that. And he did a lot of sessions, but he wasn't known as a session player, really. Right. So some of those things that put you in that higher profile drummer thing, it never really kind of came together. But I mean, this guy, man, the Little Feat catalog alone, in my opinion, just solidifies his worthiness of praise. But he also, you know, he did a lot of stuff, man, like really crazy diverse. Like it'd been a Buddy Guy record, and then Joan Armatrading, and then, you know, he'd be over there doing something with Robert Plant.
Right.
And he just really had this incredible musical thing, but at the same time, a lot of them were calling him because of his thing.
Yeah.
Which I think is a real testament. And sometimes we overlook with that guy. I think largely because his band wasn't gigantic and he was committed to them and remained loyal to them. Maybe he didn't get his due, that if you go back and listen, you're like, oh man, he should have got his due.
He's a very good blend, man, of a lot of great drummers. I mean, in other words, when I think of Richie Hayward, he certainly had his own personality, but I think what that came from was this blend of a whole bunch of great drummers.
Yeah.
I mean, man, he's almost like a Keltner and Levon Helm and Porcaro mix.
That's good, yeah. Well, he's got that New Orleans-y kind of thing happening too. That's the thing about it, you know. You got to figure, I think he grew up in Iowa, like some Midwest, you know, just sleepy part of the country. And you got to figure, man, his record collection was probably pretty solid growing up, because you hear those diverse influences and he's playing his butt off. So he definitely was exposed to some stellar stuff early on. And, you know, I'm kind of partial to drummers from the Midwest. I mean, they're okay, man.
Man, your new nickname is Americana John.
Call me Dave Cobb.
All right, man. Well, good choice, man. Excellent choice. All right, folks. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this week. As always, we love it when you stay in touch with us and when you interact with us. I mean, that's That's one of the things about this show is we want to be an open forum. So as always, feel free to reach out to us. You can email us at our Gmail account, drummersweeklygroovecast@gmail.com. You can always interact with us at Facebook, facebook.com/drummersweeklygroovecast. And always follow us and tweet us at Twitter. We are at DWGroovecast or twitter.com/DWGroovecast. New shows every Monday. You know, you can find us on iTunes, Google Play Podcasts, Stitcher, Podbean, Player FM, basically any podcast app on your phone, you can find us. If not, if you have trouble finding us, please email us. Let us know. We will get that straightened out for you. Again, we appreciate your listenership. And when you're in iTunes, if you're an Apple folk, please swing by our page and leave us a short review on iTunes. It really helps us out. If you could just click on those 5 stars, leave us a short written review. It helps us relate better to other podcasts so people can find us and listen to us. Share the love. Let all the folks that you love, even the people that you don't love, let them know about us. We want them to hear us, hear what we have to say. We appreciate you guys can have fun talking about what idiots we are. Right, John? Right, Americana John?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Okay, folks, until next week, we will see you then. Bye-bye.
Love you. Bye.